co-defendant and co-conspirator of Allison Crimes Grimes. I met with Mr. Adams because I wanted to let him know that I was strongly considering running for Secretary of State, and I knew he was someone with the same ambition. So upon hearing that I was a potential rival, Mr. Adams panicked. He began by offering me a 6-figure bribe to not run against him.
So I'm actually shocked that this hasn't made bigger waves. This hasn't made big news. So you got the establishment candidate, Michael G. Adams, and that's the language that he used. Michael G. Adams had informed Carl Nett, nothing but Nett, Carl Nett, the ex-CIA guy. So Carl Nett meets up with Michael G. Adams because they're both running for Secretary of State. Allison Lundergan Grimes has been in there for 8 years. She can't run again. So you have 4 Democrats, Jason Belcher, Heather Renee French, Jason Griffith, Jeff Sebestia, and then you have 4 Republican candidates. You have Carl Nett, Stephen Nipper, Andrew English, and Michael G. Adams. So there's 4 candidates that is running in the Republican primary. So these are both Republicans. Michael G. Adams is going to offer Carl Nett a 6-figure bribe. A 6-figure bribe. So Michael G. Adams had known, Carl Nett had known that Michael G. Adams was going to run for Secretary of State. So Carl Nett had a meeting with Michael G. Adams to see if they could just, talk about different things. When Michael G. Adams met with Carl Nett, he panics and he offers him a 6-figure bribe.
Hi, I'm Carl Nett. My campaign for Kentucky Secretary of State unofficially began here at El Nopal Restaurant at 811 Eastern Parkway in Louisville on October 12, 2017. It was here inside that I met with a young lawyer named Michael G. Adams, sometimes known now as Michael G. is for Grimes Adams, co-defendant and co-conspirator of Allison Crimes Grimes. I met with Mr. Adams because I wanted to let him know that I was strongly considering running for Secretary of State, and I knew he was someone with the same ambition. So upon hearing that I was a potential rival, Mr. Adams panicked. He began by offering me a 6-figure bribe to not run against him.
6 figures? So how much is that? Is that $900,000, $100,000? Carl Nett didn't say specific how much that bribe was. But this is bribery. I don't think you could get more of a disqualification than bribery. You're going to sit there and pay somebody out? Isn't that illegal? How come, charges haven't been filed? How come nobody has written about this? So Carl Nett gets offered a 6-figure bribe from Michael G. Adams, which should be disqualifying. I mean, God, but we do have super PACs, so we have a lot of legalized bribery. You can legally bribe people. So Michael G. Adams, he doesn't seem to know the law very well because you didn't have to do, one of those dark in the alley and the money in a suitcase kind of bribe. You could have just said, hey, I'm going to donate to your campaign. So this is huge news. This is big. Michael G. Adams then grabs a hold of Carl Nett's leg and says, hey, I got a White House pass, right? So he not only did he panic because he's got a competitor, said, hey, competitor, you want a 6-figure bribe? No. Well, you do know I got a White House pass, right? Okay, let me see your White House pass. Oh, it was a temporary one. So he's a liar. He's bribing. My God, Michael G. Adams is a bad candidate.
I'm Michael G. Adams, and here's why I'm running for Secretary of State. Because we need a strong, principled conservative who actually has the experience to do the job. Because we need someone to clean up all the corruption left behind by liberals in Frankfurt. And because we need to require a photo ID to vote in Kentucky elections. I'm Michael G. Adams, and I'm asking for your vote in the Republican primary on May 21st. Let's make it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
And Carl Nett, he could have took the bribe. Carl Nett could have took the 6-figure bribe. He could have taken the bribe and keeping it, but instead he showed honor and integrity and didn't take the buyout. He didn't just take the money. He stood up and he stood up for what was right. And he reported it. No, this guy just tried to bribe me. This asshole here just tried to bribe me. So, check it out.
He leaned in close, grabbed me by the thigh, and said, Carl, I'm a White House pass holder, you know. Well, hearing this, I, of course, was interested because I'm a former White House pass holder, as a member of the Presidential Protective Division of the U.S. Secret Service. In fact, I was in charge of the White House pass system for nearly 6 years. So I asked to see Mr. Adams' pass. Well, of course, he couldn't produce it. He turned red in the face and said that when he went there to the White House, he got a temporary pass, which he had to turn back in. I explained to him that that's called an appointment pass, for the specific day and a very narrow time frame for your appointment. But regardless, I informed him, I don't need a job, but thanks for asking.
So it is very eerie to me, this is Erie, Kentucky, when you have Michael G. Adams saying, hey, I'm the establishment candidate. Well, who's the establishment? He's been with Mitch McConnell, Ernie Fletcher, Andy Barr. So he's got, some notable people that's in his pocket. But this is Mitch McConnell, Ernie Fletcher, Andy Barr. So he's sitting there saying, well, the establishment has already chosen me. And then you've also had a bunch of scrutiny on Carl Nett. So Carl Nett has had a bunch of FBI agents asking questions to his neighbors. They've been investigating the shit out of Carl Nett, and I bet you it's because of Michael G. Adams. Michael G. Adams offered this bribe. He didn't get it, so now he's got, he's got more problems now. He didn't just have a competitor. Now he's got possible criminal charges coming for him. Michael G. Adams, he can only think of one improvement to Kentucky's democracy. Not initiatives, not referendums, not recalls, not written ballots, not written paper ballots so there's a paper trail, not instant runoff voting, so always going to discriminate against the independent, and then also public finance elections. You don't want to actually have, a fair election, right? Why would you want a fair election? So Michael G. Adams, they said, what can you do to improve Kentucky's democracy? He could only think of one idea. He says, well, a voter ID law. So come to the poll station with proof of identification, which is common sense. I mean, that just seems like, but it shows you the motivation. That's the only idea he had. Let's make sure people have an ID when they go to vote. Okay, I think it's an okay idea. I think it's common sense, but it's the only idea you could think of. That's the only thing you could think of to improve the democracy of Kentucky. So these pricks, these Republican pricks want less voters. They don't want more voters. There's only 9% that's going to turn out in May 21st. But that's, that's good enough, right? As long as you get your buddies to go vote, who gives a shit about the rest of Kentucky? And so he's not talking about increasing voter turnout rate. He's not talking about getting more voters into the system. He is trying to get less voters into the system. That's why the voter ID law sounds so great to him, because that will restrict the power of the people's vote. So if you are registered to vote but you forgot your ID, like I said, it's a common sense thing, but that's the only idea. And the idea suggests to me that he wants less voters. So Michael G. Adams is a bad candidate anyways. He doesn't have any new ideas for Kentucky. He's just going to run on his name and his reputation and, hey, I worked for Mitch McConnell. And so when it comes to Kentucky's election, perhaps Kentucky's election is just a dog catcher election. Maybe it's just low-level positions, right?
Well, Mr. Adams then switched gears. He said, Carl, I only meant that you're a bright young man with a bright future. Well, upon hearing this, I immediately interjected and said, well, thank you, Mikey, but I'm actually older than you are. So he inquired as to my date of birth and concluded, oh, you are older than me. And I said, yeah, I know, but at least they teach math at Harvard. That's good to know. Well, Michael went on to tell me that he was going to be the choice of the establishment. That's the phrase he used. Said that he would be able to raise as much as $1 million for a Secretary of State race for what is essentially an administrative job. He said that the party was very desirous of having someone like him in charge of the voter rolls because, as he put it, we don't need any more Rand Pauls or Thomas Masseys getting elected. Well, I was offended by this, and sensing that, Mr. Adams again pivoted. This time, again trying to impress upon me his bona fides, telling me that he was going to run for the U.S. Senate from his second term as Secretary of State.
No, that's not true. The Secretary of State is the chief elections officer, but you have 7 of the most powerful people in Kentucky, the executive branch. So not just the auditor, not just the treasurer, not just the agricultural commissioner, not just the attorney general, not just the Secretary of State, but also the governor and the lieutenant governor. That's of the most powerful people in Kentucky, excluding the judicial branch because they got a lot of power too, but the executive branch, the 7 most powerful people in the executive branch in Kentucky is up for election this year. This is the most important election for Kentucky. You can't get a more important election than who's going to lead Kentucky, who's going to be the main, monarch, who's going to be the tyrant, who's going to tell Kentucky this is the direction we're going to go, not this direction. So it's a very important election, and then you have a bunch of judges. You got an appeals court judges, a district judge, circuit court judge, and I don't want to say Supreme Court, but you got they're scattered, so it's not a statewide race, but you should check in to those races because how much scrutiny is the appeals judge going to get? He's not going to get any scrutiny. These judges that say, I'm firm and I'm fair, shake hands, put out signs, they don't have any platform. They have no issues. They just get in. They have power. They have money. So therefore, they're credible, right? That's all you need to be credible. And so check out your judges' races. So again, Kentucky, you got 7 very important races. 6 if you put the lieutenant governor and governor together because they run side by side. So you have 6 very important statewide races coming up just on Tuesday. So in 4 days, you only got one shot, one opportunity, one moment to go out and vote for the people that's going to lead Kentucky. If you give a shit about Kentucky, you would give a shit about who's leading Kentucky.
He told me that Mitch McConnell would run for re-election in 2020, and indeed he has since announced those very intentions. And further telling me that McConnell was going to retire in 2026. I don't know if Senator McConnell knows this, but this is Adams' plan. So I let Adams know that had been tried before. Allison Grimes tried to run for the U.S. Senate from the incumbency of the Secretary of State job, and before her on the Republican side, Trey Grayson did the same thing back in 2010, losing badly to Rand Paul. I informed Mr. Adams that I was interested in the job of Secretary of State to do the job of Secretary of State. Well, our meeting came to an end. We were interrupted by U of L students, and he was there to meet as part of some sort of symposium. So I paid my tab, walked to my car, and I concluded right then and there, I am definitely running against that guy. Ladies and gentlemen, the establishment tried to buy me, and they failed. Don't let them buy you. On May 21, vote for the candidate committed to rooting out corruption in government. Vote Carl Nett for Secretary of State. Nothing but Nett.
And then also check out those judges, too. So you have a very important election, including the Secretary of State, and you should not vote for Michael G. Adams. Not only does he have no new ideas, but he is corrupt. He's offering bribes to his competitors to, step down. Hey, don't run against me. I'll give you $100,000. And Carl Nett said no to that. No, I will not take your $100,000. And in fact, I will go to the public and I'll report it on YouTube. I will tell the public what happens, and the public will rise to my, rally to my cause. So instead of getting $100,000, he gets no money. That might be a good political tactic. He may, get the Secretary of State's seat, but it shows honor, integrity. He turned down $100,000 in order to tell Kentucky the truth. So this makes Carl Nett look like, a diamond, and this makes Michael G. Adams look like dog shit.
2002, 2008, we saw 2 crashes of the stock market. During that time that I was there with a Republican-controlled Senate, Democrat-controlled House, we went through 3 different reforms. 08, 2010, again in 2013. 2 crashes of the market, greatest recession of our lifetime. We started making those adjustments and those reforms. 2013, we made more major reforms that basically...
It's why I'm the only candidate for governor to say clearly that anybody who gives a dime to my campaign will not be eligible to serve on that board, because we need people of credential and background and experience to make sure this system runs solely for the benefit of pensioners and the taxpayers who help them pay the freight.
Mr. Atkins.
I would tell you that in the 2000...
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rang the air, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still the land.